that create a suicide bomber. The issue is back in the spotlight after last weekend's failed bombing in Sweden's capital, Stockholm. The Iraqi-born Swedish national Taimour Abdul Wahab was identified as the suspect, but the investigation quickly led to Britain, where he spent the best part of the last decade. Abdul Wahab's family says he drifted away when he moved to study at the University of Bedfordshire in Luton. The university denies turning a blind eye to extremist activities, but the Stockholm bombing has sparked fresh concern that universities could be part of the problem.
If Britain is getting a bad reputation for producing homegrown terrorists, its universities are partly to blame. That's according to a recent report which says British universities are not doing enough to tackle Islamic extremists recruiting on campus.
They don't want to challenge these kinds of ideas because obviously they want to ensure academic freedoms at university, which is an absolutely central part to a university, and we entirely agree that that should continue. What they need to understand is that at certain points, these ideas need to be challenged.
The right to freedom of speech is why this Luton mosque did not report Taimour Abdul Wahab al-Abdali to the police when he started preaching extremist ideas during a brief encounter in 2006. Community elders did, however, publicly challenge him without naming him and say he stormed out, never to be seen again. Mosque leaders insist they regularly correct misconceptions about Islam, but claim there is a difference between violent extremism and distorted ideology.
If we were to report everyone with an extremist view to the police, then they wouldn't ever come to us, and they would just go underground, and in the long term, the problem would actually get worse.
Analysts say freedom of expression can be dangerous in Britain if combined with other factors such as deprivation, cultural alienation and grievances over the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Non-violent extremism can be just as dangerous as the call to arms, especially on British campuses.
When there are extreme viewpoints on campus, that are legitimately allowed to be heard, they also need to face challenge on campus because otherwise they're being disseminated as, Islam, if you like, and then that's very dangerous.
Outside Bedfordshire University, students deny there's a problem.
Like I say, I think a lot of that's propaganda to incite more tensions and more silliness and more all these sorts of things, really.
See, if one person doing like that is, you can't say whole group is like that.
The number of terrorists being groomed on UK soil may be a tiny percentage of the Muslim population. However, few here deny that Britain has a problem.
Our guest in this focus is David Rennie, who's a columnist at The Economist, and he joins us now from London. Now, Britain is seen to be having problems with extremism. How big of a problem do you think universities are?
Well, it's clear that we've now had more than one terrorist attack committed by someone who graduated from a British university. It's also clear that on some university campuses, there's a great deal of tension. But it's very hard for universities. As the report said, they have the idea of freedom of speech and liberty of expression. The other thing is that it's very hard to draw a line and say this is extreme religious opinion and this is political. Because remember, one of the issues on British campuses is you have a lot of groups who are perhaps very angry about the situation in the Middle East. They're pro-Palestinian. That often blurs in and merges with the far left. And then that's a political debate, and it's very hard to say that a university should shut that down, but it becomes tinged with religion. One of the other issues for British universities is that because Britain uses the English language, it has a great deal of success in attracting a lot of international students. And in fact, this latest suicide bombing in Sweden was carried out by someone who was an international student at a British university. And so if you're basing some of your success on attracting people from across the world, then clearly you're going to get a lot of different opinions from across the world.
Now, the report that we heard about in the piece that we just saw, it identified university speakers and people who come to universities to speak as a potential problem. The University of Bedfordshire, as you say, where the suspected bomber graduated from, it says that it always vets all university speakers. But still, though, that must be a problem, and that must be difficult to do.
Look, I think this is an issue for, it's not just universities, it's the whole of British society, because Why is Britain unusually problematic here? Well, for one thing, we have a multicultural model where for a long time people were allowed to have their own religious beliefs, their own cultural beliefs, and there was very little idea of the authorities paying them any attention at all. And for a long time, we thought that made us very tolerant. I think we're now realizing that for a long time there was a lot of complacency and perhaps indifference rather than tolerance. There's also the historical accident in Britain that I mean, it's very easy to say Britain has lots of Muslims, France has lots of Muslims, Germany has lots of Muslims, but they all come from different sorts of places, and there's a huge difference between people who come from Turkey, and in the case of Britain, you have a very large number of people who are originally from Pakistan, and particularly the northwest of Pakistan near Afghanistan, and that's a region that's not just Muslim, but is also basically very conservative and has its own desperate problems with Islamic radicalisation in cities like Karachi, and that's where a lot of people have families. So there's all sorts of factors playing together in the UK.
What then can authorities do, and what can universities do? What can British society do to do something about this problem?
Well, I think that they need to carry on doing the things they're doing, but get better at them. I wouldn't support any big radical shift where we suddenly started saying you shut down student societies, you shut down student debate. I think it would just go underground, but I think we have to expend a great deal more energy. And it's clear that for a long time, the British police, the British authorities, they didn't even invest in things like languages. So you had things in other foreign languages on the streets of London, which were, calling for the destruction of Israel or the death to all Jews and things. And because it was in Arabic, a policeman walking down the street simply had no idea that that was there. And I think we've got a bit smarter at that. And we have to get a bit smarter and a bit more proactive. But at the end of the day, we don't want the police controlling British universities.
So there is an awareness then, just finally, there is an awareness that these problems exist.
Absolutely, and it's too glib and easy to say that, say, poverty causes terrorism. It's clear that some of the worst terrorist attacks, including 9/11, were caused by rather well-off middle-class people who went to university. So I think you ignore universities at your peril.
All right, David Rennie, who's a columnist at The Economist, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us here at France 24 today. And with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Focus. Thanks for watching.